What is up, everyone? This is Jordan from the Fantasy Fanatic YouTube channel. First off, I want to say it is OU Texas weekend. I will be down in Dallas this weekend. So if anyone's tuning in today and is going to be down there this weekend, please hit me up. I'll be down there. I'm excited to play the Texas Longhorns, even though we are looking like we're probably going to get blown out, but still, I love the atmosphere. It's one of the best atmospheres in college football, so it's going to be a great time being down there this weekend. Great food, state fair. Really, the only downsides are the traffic and OU probably sucking. So, other than that, we'll get straight into the NFL. Man, what a absolute insane week of NFL games. Probably some of the craziest games I've seen in a row all year. With Baltimore and Cincinnati to Houston and the Bills. I mean, some of those games just ended up being some of the craziest games of the week. And then obviously that Thursday night game is really what kicked it off with the Falcons and Buccaneers. So, but really first off, just want to say, man, in my SGS League, I was needing to really have a bounce back week after last week. Very rough week for me. Team got blown out, and my team comes out this week and just dominates. I was very excited to see how they played. Jordan Love played okay, but James Cook, DeAndre Swift, Jamar, Drake London, Tucker Kraft, and Trey Sermon, all of them played great. Justin Tucker had his best season, or his best game of the season so far as a kicker. So great to see the bye week for Laporta and Pollard being out. I picked up two really solid guys, and now it's starting to be a little questionable if I even start Laporta over Kraft this week. I mean, Tucker Kraft with a huge game, 2 touchdowns, so that'll be a little bit of a difficult decision for me to make whenever the time comes for that. And then it was just a huge week overall for my guys. I needed that win, so now I'll go back to 2-3. So hopefully we can get another dub this next week. So we're now just 500 even, and we're getting back into the conversation of playoffs. So, anyways, I'll go to the scores for the NFL games this week. Not scores. I like the other format more. Or no, I do like this one actually. It just looks different for some reason. Okay. So we'll go into the details of some of these games that happened this week. I mean, man, it was just a crazy week. We'll go ahead and kick it off with the Buccaneers-Falcons. I mean, this game was just absolutely absurd. Finally got to see a lot of usage out of Drake London and Darnell Mooney, both. Huge games for both of them. Kirk Cousins with 509 passing yards, more passing yards than the Patriots have put up all season. Coming into this week, the Patriots might have more than 500 passing yards now, but this is an embarrassing stat I got to share about my terrible team this year. But really the only concern was the Bijan Robinson usage. I mean, he didn't really, he didn't really have a big game. He only had like 10 points if you're full PPR, full reception, 1-point reception kind of deal. So, and then you look at the Buccaneers side of things, and, I mean, obviously it was the Mike Evans game. Mike Evans with the 2 touchdowns, 7 targets. Chris Godwin, 5 receptions, 64 yards. The backfield for the Buccaneers continues to be very questionable. Bucky Irving and Rachaad White are kind of seeing the same usage right now. Rachaad White did not come in clutch with the receptions in this game. Minus 6 yards for 3 receptions. Bucky Irving actually got involved in the passing game, son. He got 2 receptions for 12 yards. So you love to see that from Bucky Irving. If you are a Bucky Irving fantasy owner, you love to see that he is still continuing to be involved heavy in this offense, and maybe we'll end up taking the Rachaad White usage into the future. So, but Falcons, man, that was a really crazy game. They look really good this season. And they'll think they're playing Carolina this week, so probably going to be another game where their offense is just going to be clicking on all cylinders. So next up, we got Dolphins and Patriots. Obviously, this was the most boring game of the week. I mean, not really a lot of people were just tuned into this game and this game only because of how many crazy games there were in the NFL. But this wasn't one of them. I mean, it did come down to the wire. The Patriots did have a chance to win this game, but unfortunately, a Jalen Polk called back touchdown really screwed us. And real quick, I do want to say one thing, and I do think it's an absolute ridiculous rule that when a player's going backwards and he gets his toe in and a heel, but he has to have both heels in for it to be a touchdown while he's trying to catch a pass backwards. I don't understand that rule. I think it's ridiculous, and I understand it's been a rule for a while. I just really saw it for like the first time watching football this last Sunday, and thought it was just absolutely ridiculous that wasn't a touchdown, because I thought that was a great catch by Polk. So very unfortunate, but it's whatever. Really don't get a lot from this game for the Patriots side other than Stevenson. Big game for him. Gets the touchdown, 12 carries for 89 yards after supposedly losing his starting spot this week, but he ended up having a great game, 33 long run for his for the game. And then Antonio Gibson, he did get used a lot. He had a really good average yard per carry, and then he didn't really get involved as much in the passing game as Stevenson, because Stevenson had four receiving catches. So Stevenson had a pretty good game this week. Just didn't get a lot of yards with those catches, but still great for PPR reasons. And Stevenson continues to look like he's the top guy for right now. And then you look at the Miami side of things, and really the only thing you could take away from this is maybe Jalen Wright will be he's going to obviously be in a committee with Mostert, but if A-Chain's out. So you're probably going to see a committee between both of these guys. Both of these guys, definitely, if you need a waiver wire pickup. I mean, Raheem Mostert's not available in a lot of leagues, but Jalen Wright might be. If you've got Jalen Wright available on the waivers, I think he's definitely one of the top waiver pickups for this week, just because if there's no A-Chain, then he definitely will be getting some usage, and with bye weeks in effect, there is no reason for you not to at least go get a running back that you think will have a lot of usage in this offense going forward with no A-Chain. So, but a pretty strong week for him. Receiver side of things, Tyreek, he gave you about 12.9 points, so not terrible, but obviously with the first-round pick of Tyreek Hill with no Tua, it's going to continue to look like this. Jalen Waddle with another kind of disappointing game, so it's just going to continue being this way for them until Tua comes back, which we still have no word if he's going to fully be back yet, so we'll see what happens with that. Next up, we have the London game. We have Vikings and Jets. This game kind of sucked to watch too. Not really the most fun game to watch early in the morning. Really, the Vikings struggled on offense. Sam Darnold threw no TD passes. Really, you only got one touchdown from the offense, and it was C.J. Ham. So, Ty Chandler, obviously Aaron Jones went down in this game, so if Aaron Jones with that hip injury is out, then Ty Chandler is once again another huge waiver wire pickup this week. He definitely will be getting the majority of the usage in this backfield, so I do think that he is probably one of the top waiver wire pickups this week if Aaron Jones is out. So we will see him get involved with waivers a lot. And then, obviously, Justin Jefferson continues to dominate the target share, continues to dominate the receiving yards, so big game for him. A little bit of a disappointing week for Jordan Addison, but you do love to see that he's got 8 targets, so he's going to continue to be getting a lot of usage in this offense. And like I said before, there's no one else in this offense really worth picking up wide receiver-wise, so just continue to stream both of those guys. Those are the only 2 guys worth starting on this team. And then going to the Jets side of things, obviously, all Garrett Wilson owners are finally see a big game from him. 22 targets in this game, an absolute insane target share on this offense. 13 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown. So you finally get that big game from Garrett Wilson that everyone was hoping for. Tyler Conklin with another solid game, so he continues to be a pretty decent tight end stream every week. Allen Lazard with the touchdown and 10 targets. Allen Lazard continues to be, honestly, not a bad flex option every week with how much he's getting involved in this offense. And then really just the thing that's a shit show the Jets are a shit show right now. I mean, Robert Saleh just got fired today. So we're going to kind of see how it goes from there because now their head coach is another defensive guy. So I'm not really too sure how that's all going to work out. But talking about the rushing side of things, Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, both with dud games, no usage whatsoever. I mean, it continues to look like that this is going to be turning into a split backfield going forward. So all Breece Hall owners are a little concerned about that. Breece Hall is going to continue to be obviously a must start every week. I do think he still has the potential to be really good this year and still be a top 5 running back. It's just with the Braylon Allen usage, it's a little concerning. You're getting some of those carries and some of those receiving, some of those attempts or targets away. So yeah, dude, the Vikings continue to get wins. They're 5-0 on the season. Definitely one of the biggest surprises of the year. And then the Jets are falling to 2-3 now. Bears, Panthers up next. Man, the Bears are starting to look pretty good. The Bears, obviously, they beat a terrible Carolina team. But Caleb Williams is starting to come into form. This was the best game he had of his young career in the NFL with 304 passing yards, 2 TDs. So Caleb Williams looking like a pretty decent streaming option QB-wise if you're needing another QB for the bye weeks coming up. Caleb Williams actually is not a bad option. And then DeAndre Swift, I mean, very happy being a DeAndre Swift owner in the SGS League that he is finally starting to come into form, getting involved in the passing game heavy, getting the majority of the usage of carries. Obviously, Rashawn Johnson came in and took 2 TDs from him, which I was pretty pissed off about, or he would have had an absolute massive game, but still a great game for DeAndre Swift. I can't complain whatsoever. And then DJ Moore with a huge game as well. DJ Moore's biggest game of the year with the 2 TDs, 5 receptions for 105 yards. So all DJ Moore owners love seeing that. And then Cole Kmet, another decent game. I mean, he's definitely going to be involved in this offense heavy, so he's continues going to be a pretty decent streaming option for tight end. And then Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, not the best games for both of them personally, but I do think Rome Odunze will continue to get more involved in this offense in the future. So, and then Carolina side of things, really the only guy that had a great week was Chuba Hubbard on this team. Chuba Hubbard continues to dominate. Now, obviously, Chuba Hubbard only has about 1 or 2 weeks left that, about 1 to 2 weeks left of him actually being the full starter until we see Jonathan Brooks come back. So when Jonathan Brooks comes back, it's going to be interesting to see how they do this backfield. I would assume that with how Chuba's playing that it's going to be split because obviously they're super high on Jonathan Brooks this year. Eventually, we do believe that Jonathan Brooks will take over this backfield, but Chuba Hubbard's still a solid start for these next couple weeks. So if you got Chuba, I think you continue to start him with how much he's being used in this offense. And then wide receiver-wise, I mean, none of these wide receivers had a great game. I mean, Jalen Coker, he's not worth going and getting. He only had 4 targets. Jonathan Migo, not good. Miles Sanders, not good, running back. But Deontay Johnson really is the only guy worth starting every week on this team. And then Xavier Legette did go down in this game. We'll have to monitor that injury and see what happens with that. But not a great look for him. But Bears are now 3-2. Panthers go to 1-4. Next up, we got the Ravens and the Bengals. And, man, what an insane game this was. Went down to the wire, went to OT. I thought that the Bengals had this game in the bag for sure. They were up the majority of the second half. And then Baltimore comes back and gets the win. Really, what screwed Cincinnati was the missed field goal that could have made them win that game. So that was a huge L for them. Lamar Jackson just continues to be the top QB in fantasy right now. He is just absolutely dominating, and this time he did it with his passing yards and his passing TDs. So he did get involved with the rushing game too, but 348 passing yards for 4 TDs. You would see that from guys like Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, but no, Lamar Jackson can have games like this sometimes whenever they're down and he needs to pass the ball. He can definitely still pass it. Definitely he's more of a rusher, but they had to pass it in this game, and he came in and played very well. Derrick Henry with another big game, 15 carries, 92 yards, and a touchdown. And then you didn't really see a lot of Justice Hill in this game. when it came to receiving usage, so that's a little bit of a dud for him. I do think that he's still a pretty solid bench spot just because with how much he gets involved in the passing game, but seeing how he played this week is a little bit concerning. Zay Flowers finally came in, had a big game. Whenever they have to pass the ball this much, Zay Flowers is obviously going to be Lamar's favorite target, so you love to see Zay Flowers have a big week this week. And then really the tight ends just continue to be a shit show in Baltimore. You actually have Charlie Kolar, former Norman North guy, come in and only ran 9 routes and 4 targets, 3 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown. So is he a streaming option this week? No, he's not. He didn't get involved in this offense that much. He didn't have a lot of usage. But Mark Andrews had the best game of his whole fantasy season so far with 4 receptions for 55 yards. So continue to be very concerned with that. Isaiah Likely was the one who came out with the 2 touchdowns, but he only had 3 targets. So I continue to believe that really none of these tight ends are worth starting every week just because of the fact that we just don't know what's going on. They're using 3 different tight ends now. I mean, it's just all over the place. And then you go to Cincinnati's side of things, and what an absolute insane stat line for some of these guys on here. I mean, Joe Burrow with the 5 touchdowns, 392 passing yards. Just an absolute monster game for Burrow. You look at the rushing side of things, and Chase Brown continues to look like he's going to take control. Now, Zach Moss did go down in this game, so if Zach Moss is out next week, then Chase Brown is for sure skyrocketing up my running back rankings for the next week. So I definitely would recommend starting Chase Brown if no Zach Moss. And then you look at the receiving side of things, and you finally got 2 blow-up games for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I mean, Jamar Chase with an absolute monster game, 10 receptions, 193 yards, 2 TDs. T. Higgins led the team in targets once again, 9 receptions, 83 yards, 2 TDs. So huge game for both of them. No one else on this wide receiver core is worth starting anymore in my eyes. I think that these are the only 2 guys you go with for a week-to-week basis. So huge games for both of them. Jamar Chase is starting to solidify himself as one of the top wide receivers in fantasy, one of the top wide receivers in the league. And I knew it coming in that he would eventually start going off, and he is. So, and T. Higgins, obviously a great number 2. Ravens go to 3-2 on the year. Bengals are now 1-4. A little worried for the Bengals' playoff chances going forward. Obviously, a lot of football left, but still. Browns, Commanders. Going into this game, just watching the Browns, it just continues. I mean, I just continue to be right on the money with Deshaun Watson. He's a terrible QB. He's lost. I mean, it's getting to the point where it's like the fact that the Browns haven't even had any thoughts of benching him yet is crazy. And, I mean, obviously reporters are asking questions to Stefanski, like, hey, are you going to go ahead and just go with Jameis Winston this week and bench Deshaun Watson? No, they're going to continue to ride with Watson for some reason. I mean, he hasn't had any good games this year so far. I mean, I don't get it. Rushing side for Cleveland, split backfield this week. Deontay Foreman, Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford, obviously, his stock is going to go down with Nick Chubb coming back. So definitely not even maybe worth a bench spot anymore once you see that Nick Chubb takes over this backfield, which I do believe he will going forward. And then, obviously, the wide receivers, I mean, it continues to be very disappointing. If Deshaun Watson's under center, I just think that I don't even know if Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Njoku are guys even worth starting with just how bad this offense is. So, obviously, Cooper is going to continue to get the majority of the targets, but, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Hey, what's up, George Play? How are you, man? Should I trade Mason for A-Chain? My other RBs are Barkley and Gibbs. I'm 4-1. I would not trade Mason. The reason why, you have Mason for A-Chain? Yes, I would 100% do it. Because long-term, A-Chain for sure is going to be the guy. Mason obviously isn't going to be the guy whenever Christian McCaffrey comes back. So whoever's given up A-Chain for Mason obviously just needs a running back for the next couple weeks. Because whenever McCaffrey comes back, we're not going to see much of Mason anymore. So I would definitely do that. Also, dude, if you're new to the channel, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, man. I appreciate it very much. And if you have any other questions or anything, I'm always willing to willing to answer. So appreciate you stopping by, man. Yeah, I would definitely get A-Chain for sure. I think that's a steal because I think A-Chain's usage going forward, if Tua comes back, will be a lot better. So, and then you go to the Commander side of things. Obviously, the Commanders continue to be one of the biggest surprises of the year as well. One of the best offenses in the league right now. Jaden Daniels continues to be basically the steal of the draft for fantasy football, and for obviously like for just in real life perspective too. I mean, this guy is looking like an absolute monster. His rushing usage continues to rise. I mean, he is just one of the most efficient running quarterbacks in the league right now. And he didn't have as much of an efficient game this week to his standards. But as you look at this backfield, obviously Brian Robinson was banged up this week. We didn't expect a lot of usage from him. Austin Eckler did lead the team in rushing yards for running backs. But Brian Robinson still got the 2 touchdowns, so not a bad, pretty decent game for him. And then you go to the receiving side of things. McLaurin is just continuing to dominate this target share. He's definitely a guy that is worth starting every week at this point with how great their passing attack's looking now. Obviously, we were a little concerned about it the first couple weeks. We were like, well, can Jaden Daniels throw the ball downfield? I mean, I know he could, but they just weren't really doing it that much. But now that he's getting comfortable, Terry McLaurin is dominating. I don't think anyone else on this team is worth picking up. I mean, Zach Ertz continues to kind of disappoint, not looking like the best tight end start every week now. But, I mean, I don't think De'Ami Brown's a guy that you go and pick up this week with only 2 targets, even though he had a touchdown this game. So, I think, man, also, should I drop Keon Coleman for Juju and drop Trey Sermon for Tyron Tracy or take Bixby? I think that out of Keon and Juju, I really do. I'm still kind of high on Keon for the end of the year. I do think that he will end up being the top guy going forward for the Bills. So for the long term, I would probably keep Keon Coleman. Yes, Juju had a big game this week. I get it. But I think with Juju, I just think that could be one of those like outlier games for him. So I don't really expect him to have a game like that next week. Obviously, it's great to see that, and is he worth a roster spot? Yes, but I just don't know. I think you keep Keon Coleman just for the fact that I do think I'm pretty high on him the rest of the year. And he didn't have a bad fantasy game either. I mean, yes, he only had a touchdown, and that's it. But and then with Sermon, I would probably get Tank Bixby. Tyron Tracy, I think Singletary will come back and lead that backfield once again. But I know that Jacksonville's coming out and saying that ETN's still the guy and everything, but I like Tank Bixby a lot. I think that for the end of season, he's probably definitely worth it. And if Jonathan Taylor comes back this week, then Trey Sermon's irrelevant at that point. So, what's up, Jake? How are you doing today, man? Should I trade Mooney for Scary Terry? Yes, I think that's a steal. I think Mooney for sure, getting him high. That person's probably very high on him the rest of the year. I would definitely get Scary Terry because I think Terry's going to obviously dominate the targets in this offense. There's really no other wide receivers really competing with him. So I think getting Scary Terry is a steal in my eyes. I would definitely go get him, especially with how great this Commanders offense looks. I mean, the Commanders are looking like one of the best offenses in the league. So, and I mean, obviously the Falcons had a great week. Don't get me wrong. Mooney had a monster game, but yeah, I would definitely get Terry. I think long term Terry's the guy. And if you're new to the channel, dude, please like, subscribe. Please check out some of the other videos. Appreciate you coming by, man. If you have any other questions, let me know. What's up, Friesel Fantasy? How are you, man? Trade Reed and Dobbins for MHJ and Christian Kirk. This one's interesting. Oh, man. I think this one's interesting. I think obviously the most valuable player out of this trade is Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think Christian Kirk's the top guy with Jacksonville. I think Brian Thomas, wide receiver-wise, is right now. He's continuing to prove it week to week. Jaden Reed is going to continue to be the top guy for Green Bay. And then obviously J.K. Dobbins has no one competing for him for the running back spot. If you need like a really good wide receiver, I mean, yeah, you could go get an MHJ, but that's a tough one for me to pick on because Jaden Reed's had a really great year. I think he's going to continue to dominate the targets in Green Bay too. And then J.K. Dobbins, yes, he's kind of struggled the past couple weeks, but I do think that he will continue to lead this backfield and be worth it to me. So I kind of want to stay on the Reed Dobbins side, but MHJ is definitely the most valuable guy in this trade. So if you really want to get a top wide receiver like MHJ, I mean, go do it. So, but yeah, that one's a little bit of a tough one for me. Also, if you're new, man, please subscribe, like the video. Appreciate you stopping by, man. If you have any other questions, let me know. That one's a tough question. I like both sides, but I just don't like the Christian Kirk aspect. I would see if you could maybe get a running back or another decent wide receiver. See what other guys he's got instead of Christian Kirk, because I don't really like Kirk that much. But yeah, what a big week for the Commanders. 4-1 on the season. Browns are continuing to struggle. Look like absolute dog shit. So you're welcome, Jake. I got you, my brother. Colts Jaguars next game. So this was another crazy game too. I actually had Colts +4 in this game, and they barely covered. Joe Flacco, I mean, let's just be honest. When Joe Flacco starts, this passing offense just blows up. And we knew it coming into this week that must-start guys would be Josh Downs, Michael Pittman on the wide receiver side of things. But once again, we have another huge game for Alec Pearson. I mean, he only had 3 targets, but he still got 3 receptions for 134 yards and a TD. Alec Pearson's looking like that deep threat guy for the Colts, so he's going to continue to dominate that. He's kind of like Rashid Shaheed. He's kind of like Jameson Williams. He's just one of those guys that he's just such a good deep threat for him, and defenses hate playing against him because he's got so much potential on those deep balls. Josh Downs with a very efficient game. Michael Pittman, that touchdown really saved his day. 5 receptions for 37 yards. If he didn't get that TD, it would have been somewhat of a disappointing week for him. But very happy to see Trey Sermon have a decent game. Got involved in the passing game a lot too with the 6 receptions, 25 yards. So huge game for Trey Sermon. Honestly, the Colts offense looks better with Joe Flacco under center in my eyes. And Anthony Richardson, obviously he's going to probably come back and start. But Joe Flacco, I mean, just anytime that he's playing, I mean, I expect their passing offense to just blow up. So Debo and Kincaid for Kittle and Addison. That's another really interesting trade. I think I'd probably stick to the Debo Kincaid side. Obviously, Kittle's been playing better than Kincaid, but I like Debo more rest of the season than Addison because I think Debo's just such a gadget weapon for the San Francisco 49ers. I think he just had a bad game this week. I think he'll continue to dominate, though. So I'd probably stick with Debo and Kincaid and hope that Kincaid can figure it out because for right now, Kincaid's been obviously very disappointing. He's had like maybe 1 or 2 good games this year. And by saying good, I mean there weren't even like blow-up games, like big fantasy performances. But I do think Kincaid's going to continue to be very heavily involved in this offense, and he'll be one of Josh Allen's favorite targets going forward. So I think you keep the Debo Kincaid side of things. And then we go to the Jacksonville side. Finally get a win. I mean, they desperately needed one. Trevor Lawrence finally had a pretty good game. 371 passing yards, 2 TDs. Tank Bigsby. This was really the story of the week was Tank Bigsby just having an absolute blow-up game. 13 carries, 101 yards, 2 TDs. ETN, just a disappointing game. Did help a little bit with the passing usage, though. He did get 6 receptions for 43 yards, had 7 targets, so kind of saved his fantasy game. I mean, it wasn't a good one, but that did kind of save him right there. And then Brian Thomas with the blow-up game. Obviously, Brian Thomas is the top guy in this offense. I mean, what a great draft pick for the Jaguars. I mean, he is honestly looking like one of the best rookie wide receivers so far this year. I mean, you got Malik Neighbors, you got MHJ, and then you got Brian Thomas. All 3 of them have been very solid to start the year. Christian Kirk didn't have a bad game either. I mean, he got you 12.8 points, so, I mean, you can't be mad about that, but only 4 targets is a little bit concerning. Gabe Davis continues to be a guy that should be on the waivers. He's just had a very disappointing year. But yeah, what a big win for Jacksonville. They needed it desperately. They're now 1-4 on the season. I do want to say that, yes, their offense has not looked good this year, but I do think that this game will probably get their offense going. So definitely kind of higher on Jaguars offense going forward now. Brian Thomas definitely looking like the top guy. Next up, we got Bills-Texans. Another crazy game. And first off, do want to talk about what in the world were the Bills doing at the end of that game. I mean, Josh Allen threw 9 for 30. You're in the back of your end zone, and you're throwing deep shots to try to make a big play. Like, Josh Allen's passing usage in this game was absolutely terrible. I was very shocked that, I mean, that was some of the worst coaching that I've seen at the end of the game in a long time. I really don't understand it. I don't know why you don't just run the clock off completely as much as you can and make the Texans use their timeouts at the end of that game and then punt it. I mean, I don't know. I just, that didn't make any sense to me. So Buffalo really lost themselves this game here. Texans get the big field goal to win the game. Obviously, disappointing game for Josh Allen. You don't like to see it. James Cook honestly was really the only guy who had a big game this week for them. He continues to dominate this backfield. He continues to be somewhat used in the passing game. Not the best performance, but you'll take that 2 receptions for 17 yards. And then you get 5 targets from Keon Coleman, but he only had that 1 reception for 49 yards in the touchdown, which arguably that touchdown could have been called back, but we're not going to talk about that. We're still counting it as a touchdown. Obviously, they counted it. So, but yeah, you're happy to see Keon Coleman get that touchdown. Definitely helped his fantasy week because I did start him at flex in one of my leagues, so I'm glad that he had that big play to be able to actually have somewhat of a relevant fantasy game. And then obviously disappointing Kincaid. Pretty much everyone else wide receiver-wise on this team, other than Khalil Shakir, who was out this week, is not worth starting. No Mac Hollins, no Curtis Samuel, no Scantling. None of these guys are worth starting on a week-to-week basis. And then you look at the Texans side of things, and C.J. Stroud with a massive game. Good game for him. Cam Akers actually came in, got a touchdown, got the 2 receptions for 5 yards. So not a bad fantasy performance for Cam Akers. Definitely not a bad start this week after having a terrible week last week. And then you look at the receiving side of things, and obviously Nico Collins got hurt. We got to monitor that injury. But if Nico Collins is out this next week, Stephon Diggs is going to definitely have a blow-up game, I think. He will get the majority of the targets in this offense. Tank Dell continues to be pretty disappointing. I do expect Tank Dell to have a bigger week this week if there's no Nico Collins, so we'll just keep that in mind. And then Dalton Schultz obviously continues to be a disappointing tight end to start by a week-to-week basis. There's definitely better options out there, so I would just keep that in mind. But, yeah, what a big game for the Texans. They are now 4-1 on the year. Bills are 3-2. We got the Raiders and Broncos up next. Broncos played very well in this game. Defense was just massive. Gave up a lot of turnovers to the Raiders. Gardner Minshew with a trash game, and then Aiden O'Connell comes in and just doesn't play any better. 3 interceptions, actually. I forgot Aiden O'Connell threw one too. But Broncos defense looks legit. Definitely one of the top streaming defenses of the week. And then you look at the rushing side of things, and you see that Amir Abdullah kind of has a better game than Alexander Madison, gets the touchdown. Really, there is no running backs in this Vegas offense that are worth starting at this point. And, I mean, Alexander Madison did get the most of the usage, and he did get some of the receiving side of things. But, I mean, seeing Amir Abdullah come in and get some usage that he did, just a little bit concerning, obviously. That's just the reason. There's just no one on – they're kind of like Denver. I mean, the running backs usage is just pretty all over the place right now there. So, and then you look at the receiving side of things, big game for Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers continues to look like one of the top tight ends in the league this year. So, huge game for him. He will continue to be a must-start tight end from a week-to-week basis. Jacoby Myers with no Devontae Adams. He'll continue to be the top guy in this offense, wide receiver-wise, so definitely not worth a flex spot from time to time if you need him. But when Devontae comes back, obviously his usage is going to go down. But this is such a terrible offense. You can't really count on it every week. And then Denver side of things, you are very happy to see Javonte Williams. All the Javonte Williams owners are probably very happy to finally see him have a good game. And it really was the receiving side of things that helped his game out the most with 5 receptions for 50 yards. So such a huge game for him on the receiving side of things. And you see Bo Nix have one of the better games of his young career this week. But there was no wide receivers on this team that went off. I mean, Courtland Sutton, another disappointing performance. And then you see little Jordan Humphrey get involved, Troy Franklin. I mean, they're passing it to so many different guys. I mean, it's just it's getting to the point where none of these wide receivers are worth starting every week. Even Courtland Sutton, even though he gets the majority of the usage. But Javonte Williams, I would continue to start. But Courtland Sutton definitely kind of up in the air now. But Denver's 3-2. So Denver's getting some wins. Next up, we got Cardinals 49ers. This was another pretty close game, too. Cardinals came away with the win. Another pretty crazy game. Kyler Murray actually had a pretty decent week, fantasy-wise. Didn't get a lot of passing yards, but you will take the 7 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. That was a huge game rushing-wise for him. James Conner just dominated this backfield. I mean, really dominated big time. So 2 receptions for 14 yards. So not a bad week for him. Not the best, though, but he did dominate this backfield. No one else even carried the ball running back-wise. Marvin Harrison Jr. with a disappointing game, but obviously that's going to happen some weeks for him being a rookie, so just keep that in mind. Michael Wilson had the best receiving game for wide receivers in this game. I mean, is he worth a starting spot or a flex spot to me? Not really. I think he's just a boom-bust type of guy. And then Trey McBride continues to be a tight end that you honestly got to continue to must start every week. I mean, he's getting involved in this offense heavy, had the most targets on this team, so definitely keep Trey McBride in your lineups every week. And then you look at the 49ers side of things, Brock Purdy, 2 interceptions, didn't really play the best game. Jordan Mason actually had his worst game fantasy-wise this season. Even though he's pretty efficient as a runner in this game, it was just the fact that they were down the majority of the game. They had to pass it a lot more. But 14 carries, 89 yards, still a 6.4 average, so he still continues to do pretty well running back-wise. Just not the best fantasy performance from what you would expect from him. And then Brandon Ayuk, this was the Brandon Ayuk blow-up game. We've been waiting for this all year. He's been destined to finally have a game where he blows up, and it was a huge one, too. 8 receptions for 147 yards off 12 targets. George Kittle led the team in targets as well with 12. Big game for Kittle. He continues to be a must-start tight end every week as well. Obviously, Deebo Samuel, very disappointing game for him, but like I said, I do think Deebo will be just fine. I think Deebo will continue to have big weeks. I think Juwan Jennings, with all these guys back, he's starting to become a guy that I think is worth just dropping on the waivers at this point with all these other players coming back, especially when McCaffrey comes back. So, but yeah, big win for the Cardinals. They desperately needed it. San Francisco looking a little concerning to start this year. Very slow start for them. So, next up, Packers-Rams. Looking at this side of things, man, Packers got the win. Jordan Love, not the best game, the cleanest game from him. He did throw that pretty bad pick, I will say. And then Josh Jacobs, you finally get some really good usage from him. You got the touchdown, got the 1 reception for 21 yards. So Josh Jacobs looking pretty good. Definitely a must-start running back every week. Tucker Kraft with the blow-up game. Started him this week in the SGS League. He had a great 2-touchdown game, so it's honestly looking like I might start him again next week over Laporta. So big game for him. I'll still continue to think about that, but I think I might start Kraft this week. And then Jaden Reed, obviously, is going to continue to be the top guy wide receiver-wise on this team. 4 receptions, 78 yards. Also had 2 carries for 19. So not a bad game for him, but not the best. Dontavian Wicks really was the biggest disappointment this week. He did lead the team in targets, but only 2 receptions for 20 yards. So it was looking like he was destined to have a pretty decent game with no Dobbs, no Christian Watson. But, no Wicks. Wicks is kind of looking a little concerning. I do think just because he is continuing to get a lot of target share in this offense, though, that I think you obviously still have him on a bench spot, but flex consideration's a little bit suspect now. And then on the Rams side of things, Kyren Williams just continues to dominate. Definitely one of the top running backs fantasy-wise this year still. 22 carries for 102 yards and a TD. Jordan Whittington actually led the team in receiving yards this week. Big game for him. He continues to be kind of like the number 2 option behind Tutu Atwell with no Cooper Kupp, no Puka Nacua in this offense. So Tutu Atwell with another pretty decent game too. So these guys continue to be pretty decent streaming options, flex plays for y'all. I do know that they are on bye week this week though, so fortunately not going to get that from them. But Cooper Kupp will most likely be back week 7. So these guys after that might not even be worth starting anymore. And then Demarcus Robinson got the TD, but he's not really a guy I'd ever look forward to. Kyren Williams continues to dominate. They are now 1-4 in the season. Packers are 3-2. So next up we got Giants and Seahawks. This was one of the biggest surprises of the week. Seahawks were a -7 favorite in this game, and were down the whole game pretty much. Daniel Jones continues to kind of impress me with how he's played so far this year. With no Malik Neighbors, you would have expected this offense to crumble, but no. 257 passing yards, 2 TDs. Tyrone Tracy with a big game, 18 carries for 129 yards. And you did get some usage from Eric Gray, especially in the passing game, too. He had 3 receptions for 50 yards. So, obviously, if Devin Singletary comes back, you don't really expect those other 2 guys to even be worth starting, especially Eric Gray. Tyrone Tracy, maybe we might get a split backfield going forward. We'll kind of see how that goes. And then Darius Slayton with the blow-up game. Don't want to overreact. No Malik Neighbors. Wandell, not the best game for him. Actually, pretty decent game. I forgot he got that touchdown. So, pretty decent game for Wandell, too. But don't overreact on Darius Slayton. I know he's probably going to be a guy that some people are going to look at on the waivers, but with Malik Neighbors coming back, Darius Slayton's not even worth starting. And then with the Seahawks, Geno Smith obviously had to pass a lot once again, being down the majority of the game. Kenneth Walker kind of saved the day for his owners with the 7 receptions for 57 yards, led the team in targets this week. And then obviously pretty disappointing performances from Lockett and DK. Lockett not actually bad. You'll take 11.5 points from Lockett. But DK, a little bit of a disappointing game for him. Jackson Smith-Njigba did get you that touchdown, so not a bad performance from him. You continue to start DK, Jackson Smith-Njigba, I feel like, every week. And then Tyler Lockett's still not a bad flex spot. So just wide receiver usage continues to kind of be the same right now for the Seahawks. They're using all 3 of these guys. So, the Giants are 2-3 on the season, and then the Seahawks go to 3-2 after being 3-0 to start the season. So back-to-back losses for them. And then we go for the night game. We got Dallas and Pittsburgh. Heavily delayed game. Actually heard a stat. Dak Prescott's the first QB in NFL history to throw an interception on 2 separate days. So you Cowboy fans, how about them Cowboys? Ain't that right? What a stat that is. Dak Prescott obviously had to throw a lot in this game. He had 42 passing attempts, 352 yards, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions. So pretty decent performance fantasy-wise for Dak. Rico Dowdle is pretty much the lead guy in this backfield now. So Rico Dowdle's looking like a guy that for sure is flex consideration every week now. Put up 20 points this week. So, he had a huge game. 2 receptions for 27 yards and a TD as well. So, Rico Dowdle is actually looking like a guy that you could throw in your lineup every week now with how he's playing, because it's looking like he's taking Zeke's spot. Zeke is just kind of falling down rankings now. Zeke's definitely a waiver wire guy at this point. And then you get a blow-up game from Jalen Tolbert. 7 receptions, 87 yards and a TD with no Brandon Cooks. So Tolbert definitely a top guy on waivers this week with no Brandon Cooks these next few weeks with him being on IR. I think Tolbert's definitely a guy that you could go and go pick up and at least have a roster spot for. So, and then Ferguson continues to be a pretty decent tight end to start on a week-to-week basis with his 13 points. So definitely consider Jake Ferguson every week. And then CeeDee Lamb, yes, a little bit of a disappointing game for him for his standards, but don't expect this every week from him. And then you go to Pittsburgh side of things, and obviously it's a messy game for them. Najee Harris got a pretty decent amount of usage in the passing game. Not a best game for him, though. And then you look at the receiving side of things, and it's just very messy. I mean, not really a great game for George Pickens. Pratt Freiermuth did get that touchdown, so that kind of saved his fantasy game. But like I said, really the only wide receiver worth starting is George Pickens, and it's going to continue staying that way. There's no one else in this wide receiver core that's worth starting on a week-to-week basis. And then Pat Freiermuth, obviously not a bad tight end to start every week, but he just didn't get a lot of target usage in this game. So, but Dallas is now 3-2. Pittsburgh goes to 3-2. That is now back-to-back losses for the Steelers. And then our last game of the week is going to be the Chiefs and the Saints game from last night. Obviously, this game was not close. Didn't really feel like it was close. Derek Carr got hurt, so that honestly really hurt the Saints' chances of even having a comeback whatsoever. So if Derek Carr is out next week, then I would be very concerned starting any wide receiver for the Saints coming up. Obviously, Alvin Kamara still somewhat saves the day for you with his 6 receptions for 40 yards. But Rashid Shaheed, another big game, and led the team in targets, 4 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown. Shaheed continues to dominate with Derek Carr under center. And then you obviously are very disappointed seeing Chris Olave with only 2 receptions, 10 yards. So Olave, not the best season for him to start. His target shares went down. Shaheed's target shares went up. So Shaheed, at this point, is looking like a top guy on this team right now. Obviously, I don't want to overreact. I still think Olave is the top guy, but Shaheed continues to show that he's definitely worth at least flex spot every week for sure. So, but obviously, if no Derek Carr, I don't think any of those guys are worth starting this next upcoming week. And then you got Mahomes. Mahomes, no plus passing touchdowns, still gives you 331 passing yards. Really a blow-up game for Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's looking like he's going to be the top guy running back-wise going forward, so definitely worth starting him every week with him being the top guy. Huge game for him with the 27 carries, 102 yards. Did get you a reception for 15 as well. And then the blow-up game for Juju Smith-Schuster. Obviously, this could just be an outlier game. Juju could not play that great next week, and I wouldn't be surprised. But I would be surprised if Juju had another game like this next week. So I do definitely think Juju Smith-Schuster is worth a roster spot. Definitely one of the top waiver wire pickups this week for sure, just for how he played. But I wouldn't overreact too much. Travis Kelce is obviously going to be the top guy in this offense going forward. He got the 9 receptions for 70 yards. So obviously Travis Kelce rest of the season is going to be one of the top tight ends with no Rashee Rice. So and no Marquise Brown as well. Can't forget that. And then Xavier Worthy did save you with the touchdown. So Xavier Worthy, I think, will continue to rise as we go from a week-to-week basis. So don't want to count him out at all. So, but a little bit of a messy game, but the Chiefs get the dub. They're 5-0 in the season. Them and the Vikings are the only undefeated teams left in the NFL right now. So, but yeah, that's all the games that we had going on this week. Huge games for them. What a week for football. Now, we're looking into the future. We're looking at week 6, right? Bye weeks we got going on this week. We got the Chiefs, we got the Rams, we got the Dolphins, and the Vikings. So, Chiefs, obviously, you're going to have no Kareem Hunt. You're going to have no Travis Kelce, no Xavier Worthy. So, definitely going to have to find some spots for them. Rams, no Kyron Williams. And then Dolphins, really no Tyreek, no Jalen Waddle. But Vikings, you also got no Justin Jefferson this week, no Jordan Addison. And then Ty Chandler. Could be worth a waiver wire pickup, but we're going to have to see how this hip injury is for Aaron Jones. Since they got a bye week, he's got more time to get healthy. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, we'll look into this next week's slate in a couple days. We'll make another video, another live stream for that. And then, what time is it right now? It's 12:42. And then SGS League, we will go into depth about the we'll go into more in depth about the matchups we got this week, and then we'll talk about week 5 fantasy wise for our teams tomorrow. So we'll talk about that tomorrow for sure. We'll get into that, but everyone who tuned in today, thank you for coming out. We will definitely be back sometime tomorrow for I do work all day tomorrow now that I think about it. Might be a late stream tomorrow if I do it. Might be a late stream tomorrow. I might actually go ahead and make that video now. But yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll think about this one. We'll definitely get into this for sure. Everyone, thank you for tuning in.